At the World Bank Shahada Conference Room, global financial leaders assessed GIFT City's progress and its potential to channel international capital into India. The discussion focused on deeper financial markets, global talent, infrastructure financing, and the role GIFT City could play in connecting India with the world.
All other senior officials from various multi-capital agencies. When we talk about GIFT City, where is the genesis? Essentially, when our Honorable Prime Minister, when he was the Chief Minister way back in 2007, that was when he had this idea as to why can't we create a world-class finance and IT zone for India to provide services not only to India, but to the entire world. So that's the genesis way back in 2007 when he was the Chief Minister. And as we progress in the presentation, you'll understand where we have come to. Currently, when we have our Honorable Chief Minister, he is driving this whole. Yeah, I got it. No.
Close. Just speak closer to the mic.
Now, so we have Honorable Chief Minister who is at the forefront leading us to how GIFT City progresses and grows. These numbers, a lot of you would know, but I'm to give it in the perspective about how GIFT City is envisaged and how we are going to grow. Essentially here, when I show these numbers, the important point here is not India's size, it is a transition that is taking place. India is predominantly moving from a destination for capital, becoming an increasingly sophisticated capital economy, where raising, deploying, managing, and eventually exporting capital and financial services. And at the same time, the capital requirement for India's infrastructure, urbanization, manufacturing, energy transition, and technology transformation will be enormous. We very strongly believe that conventional public finance and bank lending alone cannot meet that requirement. Now, the question comes at how do we crowd substantially larger pools of global institutional capital into this opportunity? With this perspective, now, GIFT City, where is it? It's in Gujarat, between Ahmedabad and Gandhinagar. I talked a little bit about Gujarat. Of course, initial film showed some how we are progressing. Advantage Gujarat. Logistics performance, it leads the country. It has India's longest coastline, top achiever in ease of doing business. Gujarat's port handled 40% of port cargo, and is a great producer and exporter state of India. Viksit Gujarat to Viksit Bharat. In fact, when we talk about Viksit Bharat, we are very proud to say that it's Gujarat which leads this whole, paradigm. That Viksit Bharat is synonymous with Viksit Gujarat. Industry of the future, services of the future. Gujarat is a tourism hub, agriculture, irrigation, so on and so forth. We say. Now, Gujarat economy at a glance. I showed you the first slide, which talked about India. Now, we see Gujarat's economy. How does it compare to it? When I mentioned that Viksit Bharat is Viksit Gujarat is leading it. 8.3% of India's GDP, cumulative FDI of 68.8 billion, 18% of India's industrial output with 15% of India's factories, 35% of manufacturing sector in the states, GSVA, 31.33% share in India's total exports. And of course, we have 2 million plus registered MSMEs across the value chain. What is very important is, the talent ecosystem which exists in Gujarat. And in fact, this is what is leading, this will become relevant when I talk about GIFT City, how the talent ecosystem of Gujarat is very relevant to what we are doing. We have 71,000 finance professionals, software engineers, management professionals, and it has the largest talent pool in India with 4.4 million professionals just across the various engineering and other technical offerings that we have in the state. Just some logos as to what kind of companies are present. It's a very strong manufacturing base what Gujarat has. Now let's come to GIFT City. With this perspective, with this background, India, Gujarat, and what GIFT City is, what defines us. Now, basically, when I talk about GIFT City, there are really two experiments that are happening simultaneously at GIFT. One is an international financial jurisdiction. The other is a new generation city built around it. The most important institutional innovation was India's decision to create a unified financial regulator for the financial services center. Incentives helped us establish the market, but we very strongly feel that incentives by themselves just give a small competitive advantage. Ultimately, GIFT must compete on regulation, market depth, legal certainty, technology, talent, and of course, ease of doing business. This is what we strongly believe. Incentive is something, yes.
So I just want to interrupt you, Jitendra, just to let everybody know what GIFT means. It means the G is for Gujarat, then it's international,
Finance,
the F is for finance, and the T is for tech.
Yes.
So those are the three attributes: international, financial, and tech.
That's correct. Yeah. Where are we? It's 500 kilometers north of Mumbai. That's where a lot of you would easily connect to. It's a 1-hour flight. 18 kilometers from Ahmedabad airport. 15 minutes from the proposed bullet train terminal. Now, when sometime in 28, when the bullet train connectivity between Ahmedabad and Mumbai is on, it will be just a 2-hour train ride from GIFT City to Mumbai. Ahmedabad airport is connected to 58 global destinations, and we have, of course, a very good metro connectivity, which is there. Let me come to, when we talk about this connectivity, we see that physical connectivity, of course, matters, but increasingly financial and digital connectivity matters even more, is what we say. Our ambition is to make GIFT an easy access to institutionally as well as physically, both aspects. We have a total of 886 acres. It is into 2 zones. One is a special economic zone where we have the International Financial Services Center, and the remaining is a domestic, we call it as a domestic tariff area. It is envisaged 886 acres, very roughly. Again, the architecture, this is very different from what we have in the International Financial Services Center globally. Let's talk about maybe Dubai or Abu Dhabi, Singapore, Hong Kong, or maybe Canary Wharf in London, or New York for that matter. We are architecturally very different. We are not just a special economic zone, we have created a distinct international financial jurisdiction alongside a domestic ecosystem. It gives India something very valuable, a controlled environment in which we can introduce globally benchmarked financial products and regulatory products, and that allow them to develop within India. Now we see that can IFSC, we ask ourselves internally also, and we very strongly believe that can this IFSC such as GIFT also become a laboratory for financial sector innovation and regulatory reform. This is something very important, we very strongly believe in this. And in fact, the regulations which we have a unified regulator within GIFT City. The regulations adopt themselves, evolve depending on the kind of businesses. Of course, we are globally benchmarked, that is one, but then we are evolving and we adapt. So we have a sandbox approach wherein you actually have the regulations, in real-time situations you roll it out, and that's how we do. What's the value proposition? Now, of course, I talked about global benchmarking, integrated development, that is fine. But for me, 3 of these matter above everything else: global benchmarking, talent, and ease of doing business. Now, we continuously benchmark ourselves not against the domestic financial centers, of course, but against Singapore, Dubai, and other global centers. Now, the real test is whether an international institution sees GIFT City as a credible jurisdiction in which to deploy capital, manage risk, and conduct cross-border financial activity. These 3 factors is what will bring business to our place. The credibility has to be there. Finance works totally on credibility and trust, and this is what we are attempting to create. A little bit about the incentives. Of course, we have a 20 years tax holiday, indirect tax benefits are there. 20 years income, corporate tax in block of 25 years. There's complete exemption. We have GCC policy and ITITS policy which the state government offers, and we have other incentives, exemptions under the Companies Act, exemption by STT and no stamp duty. Here again, this incentives for necessary, again I go back to the point, incentives by themselves would not drive business to the international financial center. These incentives are necessary in the market creation phase, because we are competing with established international financial centers that have decades of accumulated advantage. But our objective is to progressively move the conversation from incentives to competitiveness. The question for the next phase is, what regulatory, legal, and market architecture makes financial activities stay in GIFT even independent of the fiscal arbitrage? Because at this point in time, probably except for Dubai or Abu Dhabi, we are on a tax basis more or less competitive with all of the international financial jurisdictions. So our next phase would be to ensure that how these businesses stay here, come here, independent of, like I mentioned, the financial fiscal arbitrage. Of course, when I mentioned initially the third or fourth slide, it is not just the financial services center, but it's also an ecosystem that we are creating. Now, financial centers ultimately compete for people, not just institutions. Our next challenge, therefore, is social infrastructure, which talks about schools, healthcare, recreation, culture, hospitality, and housing, so that global talent can live here, not merely work here. Now, this also raises a broader urban development question. Can we build a high-density financial city which is productive, sustainable, and livable right from the beginning? And here we would say, I'm lucky in the sense it was a greenfield city. When we began, it was a barren piece of land by the side of the river Sabarmati. There was nothing that was revised basically. So we have the luxury of planning out the city how it has come out. And the whole attempt is to make it sustainable and livable right from the beginning. 100% of built space certified in the green building standards. India's first district cooling. It's designed to support near zero liquid discharge. And India's first automated waste management system. We are very proud of this. At this scale, about 886, we are still expanding. We have some more land that has come in. This kind of infrastructure at this scale is not there in the country, in India, and globally also very few places at this scale. So we're very proud of this system. Now, here we again continue that this is potentially where GIFT can become more than a financial center project. We would like GIFT itself to become a demonstration platform for sustainable urban infrastructure. There is potentially an interesting partnership here with World Bank, using GIFT as a living laboratory for sustainable urban infrastructure and its financing. A little bit on what kind of the ecosystem, what sectors have come in there. There are some numbers. Just what has happened along the financial sector also is important. We talked about the infrastructure. 1,200 plus registered entities, monthly tour. We have stock exchanges. We have 373 aviation assets, that's aircraft leasing, which is happening there. We have about 41 banks, of which more than 55% are global banks. We have 217 fund management entities. Now, these numbers are important because GIFT City has crossed the proof of concept stage. The question is no longer whether an international financial center can be created in India. We have already created it. It is, our challenge is depth now. Deeper markets, more sophisticated instruments, greater institutional participation, and substantially greater mobilization of international capital. I think that is what we are now. It's that phase. In fact, wherever we go, it's about people know about GIFT City, people know what's happening there. So our attempt now is to ensure that the depth comes in, the substance comes in. So these numbers are an indication of this. Now by themselves, these numbers might not seem impressive, but the fact is, in GIFT City, the regulation was notified. It was enacted by the Parliament in 2019, and then we had COVID, which came in. So technically, the International Financial Services Center began functioning only in 2021, 2022. So we are just 4 years old. I say very often that we are toddlers compared to maybe Singapore or Hong Kong or New York or London, which are there since centuries. So but these numbers become relevant at that point in time. Something greenfield, an experiment which India started, and now we can see it taking friction. Just some logos, what kind of banks are there? We have all the major global banks. E-services, of course, corporate banking, trade finance, retail banking, risk management. Now, banking gave its initial balance sheet because At this point in time, the banking sector is the most mature sector. The whole ecosystem, there was banks come in, then you have the cap funds which come in. So the next evolution is to make it increasingly relevant for cross-border financing, trade finance, structured finance, and risk management. Now, how do we, the attempt is, the question we ask ourselves is, how do we use these balance sheets to crowd in substantially more private capital? I mentioned funds. These are also very mature. We have fund management entities, retail FME, we have non-retail FMEs and authorized FME. We have government incentives. I would not dwell much, but I would like to dwell more on what we think and how we look at it, how we see, how we grow. I would say this is extremely relevant to IFC and the World Bank Group. This is potentially one of GIFT's most important opportunities. India needs enormous pools of patient institutional capital. GIFT can become something which all of you should be thinking. GIFT can become the platform connecting pension funds, sovereign funds, insurers, and global asset managers with Indian infrastructure, climate, manufacturing, and technology opportunities. Now, can IFC and MEGA help us create structures where blended finance, guarantees, credit enhancement, improve the risk return proposition sufficiently to bring much larger institutional investors in India? I think that is what we were talking about just before the meeting started. We have a very strong capital market ecosystem, 3 exchanges. We have subsidiaries for the Bombay Stock Exchange and National Stock Exchange. We also have a gold bullion exchange, which is functional there. Now, no global financial center becomes significant merely because it has institutions. It becomes significant because it has liquid markets, and this is where we talk about liquidity. We want to deepen debt markets, sustainable finance, securitization, and other instruments capable of bringing global capital into Indian assets. Now, this is where we would value World Bank and IFC experience. My question would be, what are the missing instruments and market institutions we would want to understand and take your help? We have the insurance sector ecosystem, which also is very strong. Development finance is ultimately about allocation of both capital and risk. Insurance, reinsurance, guarantees, and other risk transfer mechanisms therefore have to become much deeper. For international investors, often the issue is not absence of capital, it is whether particular risks can be allocated and mitigated appropriately. We keep on saying that where there's confidence, where there's trust, that is where finance would flow, and this is our attempt to do that. Aircraft ship leasing ecosystem also is developing. Now here, I would just want to brief the gathering here. Aircraft leasing is an interesting case study. India is one of the world's fastest growing aviation markets. Our order books have close to 2,000 aircrafts which have to be leased among the 2 large carriers. But historically, much of the financing and leasing activity occurred offshore, primarily in Ireland and something in Singapore and lately Dubai. Through coordinated regulatory, tax, and legal reforms, we are beginning to bring that activity to India. This is the GIFT model. Identify the financial activity linked to Indian economy that is occurring offshore. Understand why it is offshore and systematically remove barriers that prevent them from operating here. Aircraft leasing regulations were notified about 3-4 years back, but then there was some last mile, if you ask me, last mile hitches. And just this year, the government of India tweaked the regulation, tweaked the law, and then the flow started. We have GCCs also and GIFT. Financial centers, we believe, increasingly compete on intellectual capital. Now, while GCCs are in the domestic area, a smaller number in the financial center is contiguous. Our ambition is therefore not to create back offices. We want treasury, risk and analytics, of course AI, product development, compliance, and decision-making functions to sit alongside financial institutions. That is our intent. When I talk about GCCs, it's that segment we are talking about in GIFT City. Treasury centers for me are strategically important because they move GIFT from being merely a location for financial institutions to becoming part of financial infrastructure or architecture of multinational corporations. We want global companies operating in India and the region to increasingly manage liquidity, foreign exchange, financing, and risk from GIFT City. In fact, we are very aggressively pushing the treasury centers to start operating from there. FinTech, TechFin, IT and ICT services, of course, are there. talent I mentioned in the beginning, we have a good talent pool in the ecosystem, when I say in the catchment area rather, Gujarat, adjoining states of Maharashtra, Madhya Pradesh and Rajasthan. Within GIFT City, we have foreign universities. There are 3-4 of them. One more is opening up very shortly. And we have our own institute, which is being run with the help of ADB funding. The constraint on the next phase of GIFT may not be capital or even regulation, it may be talent. We therefore need to create a pipeline combining finance, technology, law, regulation, etc. Now that is where we talk about the talent in Gujarat, our efforts to make that pipeline within GIFT City, the industry and academia connect. So we are very conscious of that. Just some logos as to what kind of institutions are present there. You'll get an idea of who are present there. These are some of the famous ones, known logos. Now here, when I showed this slide, what is important is you have to realize that the ecosystem has begun to acquire critical mass. But the critical mass is not a destination. The next challenge is what this ecosystem actually produces, and we are very conscious about that. We are working towards an ecosystem both in terms of the regulations as well as the livability there. Yes, that's all from my side, a very brief introduction to who we are, what we do, and the team.
Yeah, I just wanted to ask the team if you want to add anything, Mamta and others.
From the state government, we are working very much in coordination, and this is also one project which we take a lot of pride in. At the same time, right now we are focusing a lot to increase the social infrastructure in we have come out with a lot of regulations, and also we are developing a very vibrant and thriving ecosystem there. And that is why I request all of you to come in Vibrant Gujarat, because this is how we would like to present GIFT in a different manner to the entire world.
Good morning to all of you. The presentation covered almost all the subjects. One thing I would just propose to the forum also, GIFT is evolving and evolving very fast, especially the IFSC side. So here when we are meeting people and experts here, we would like to know what type of, as a state government also, even as a national government, what are the things as a policy instruments or any other things that the state government can do further to develop this. As Sanjay mentioned, we have acquired a lot of criticality, but we have to further deepen. So I look forward to inputs and interaction.
Good ask.
बड़ी डिमांड करनी है तो भी कर दीजिए अभी कर सकते हो बाद में कर सकते हो जब आपकी मर्जी है.
We would like to invite you everyone in GIFT City. The new avatar of GIFT City will see. There's a lot of social and reforms, and we have a sports arena, we have entertainment, we have a world cuisine friendly area we are developing, and a lot of international clients we can serve like we have that regulation, a major discovery regulation in Gujarat they have done. So we want to invite you to have a feel of the GIFT City and feel of the evening life to the GIFT City, but we are all deprived of, and that's a myth going around. We want to invite a real walk to work experience.
Excellent, excellent. So I'm going to ask, actually, we have all of the parts of the World Bank actually represented over here at a very, very senior level. Let me go first to John. Do you want to go first, or Sarvesh, or Junaid? The three of you have to decide who goes first, who goes second, who goes third, but you have to go. You want to react and see how you can, what are the kind of quick reactions you have to the presentation, but what would be the more sort of longer term strategy to help? Go ahead.
So thanks very much for this presentation. It's extremely interesting, and of course we're very keen in the World Bank Group to see the success of this particular initiative in Gujarat for the state and also for India more generally. I think some of the critical questions for us concern the sustainability and replicability of some of the incentive structures that currently exist to make this particular effort in Gujarat as successful as it's been so far. And also questions around the attraction of talent. You mentioned this a few times. Your presentation is stressing the ability so far of Gift City to attract a lot of corporate entities that are seem to be making effective use of that space. But you didn't say a great deal about the social, environmental, livability considerations that may be attracting or failing to attract the type of talent that the Gift City is going to need to be successful in the longer term. So I'd be interested to hear a little bit more about that as well. As you're probably aware, the World Bank Group has been involved in the past and currently in working in other greenfield urban centers. We're in Amaravati, for instance, both IFC and the World Bank, and we've been involved in other countries and other cities as well. And that social aspect can be a significant hurdle. I'd be curious to know how that's being addressed at present and what the prospects are in the medium and long term, how you're addressing all of that. Thanks.
The other thing that they asked John was like, do we have experience at the same stage or at different stages, in the sense, what are the lessons of experience for a venture like this, right? I mean, especially from East Asia, I think.
Yeah, exactly. I think East Asia would be the place to look. I know that around 20 years or so ago, we actually looked at the competitiveness of cities in China that were emerging as local economic zones, domestic economic zones, and building massive amounts of infrastructure, trying to attract talent. And we did do a quite lengthy study of something like the top 20 cities at that time. This would have been around 2004, 2005. And livability emerged as a very, very big issue. And there was quite clear evidence emerging in those days of the advantage that was going to the cities where livability issues were top of mind for the urban leadership and being addressed effectively. I don't know whether we've done any follow-up to that since, but that would be an example of some learning that we could help bring to you going forward.
Why don't we go to Sarvesh first?
Yeah, thank you.
Sarvesh.
Can you hear me?
Yes, we can hear you very well.
Perfect. Yeah, thank you. Good morning, Honorable Chief Minister of Gujarat, Mr. Patelji, ladies and gentlemen. I'm really delighted to be having this discussion here today because as Mr. Sanjay was presenting, I was reminded of my own time in Gujarat where I went into one of these institutions to do my MBA that was listed on his slide. And I was also reminded of the industriousness, the business acumen of the population of the people of Gujarat that I first-hand witnessed during my education there. And I can see the same spirit of innovation, the same spirit of industriousness coming together in this idea of the Gift City, the vision behind the Gift City, which is really leading to becoming the global gate for international capital into India, leading to the vision of Viksit Bharat 2047, as was also mentioned in the presentation. So I think with that context, let me just say 3 points. The first is, as Mr. Sanjay mentioned in the presentation, what we are seeing from the IFC side is already the Gift City is starting to become a global gateway for capital as a global financial center, not only into India, but also playing at the regional level. That's number one. The second point I would mention is about a few transactions where IFC has played a role in working through the Gift City, becoming a direct beneficiary of its impact. And number three is that in terms of the vision for the private sector, as was mentioned, around our vision to create more and better jobs in developing economies, as we plan to raise or mobilize more private capital for investments, for developmental projects across India, GIFT City will continue to be a major gateway for channelizing that capital for the World Bank Group. So let me just explain what I'm trying to say. As was mentioned by in the meet earlier, I'm in Tokyo today, and I had a series of meetings with various financial institutions, including in the insurance sector, but also sovereign wealth funds, pension funds, and banks. And at least 3 of the institutions I met during this week have talked about how important the GIFT City has become to their operations for channelizing global capital into India. All the companies I've met, all the private sector players I've met from Japan this week have talked about how important India has become central to their strategy for investments in emerging markets. So definitely, I think in terms of the impact that I am seeing that the GIFT City is already presenting to channelizing global capital into India and into the broader region, that's already taking place and it's making waves in the market. Mr. Sanjay presented some of the numbers and they speak for themselves. With single day trading that is peaking at close to somewhere between $12 to $20 billion of capital exchange every day, an international banking system that settles cross-border transactions in less than a minute. I think some of the competitiveness numbers and the volume numbers, although it's still early days as was pointed out, is already starting to make waves in the global context. Now, point number 2 that I wanted to talk about is the fact that IFC has already been starting to look at investments in various streams through the GIFT City. Our first engagement started with our own bond listing. In 2023, we issued a $250 million green bond on the India International Exchange, which was domiciled in the GIFT City, laying the foundation basically for IFC's first engagement through the GIFT City. And this transaction illustrates the entire power of the ecosystem that it presents. We issued an offshore bond on the India International Exchange. This bond was fully subscribed by an international pension fund, the California State Treasurer's Office. And the deployment of the funds was made into long-term climate-smart infrastructure projects all over India. So we are already seeing how the ecosystem starts to play in this capital market development angle. Mr. Sanjay also talked about the role we can potentially play in funds that are established through the GIFT City. And indeed, IFC, as part of the World Bank Group, has been one of the main financiers or one of the important financiers for private equity as well as venture capital funds in India, but also globally. And through the GIFT City, we've invested close to about $400 million of capital in multiple funds, and I'll give you a few examples. So some of the IFC-backed fund managers, including the Vivriti Asset Management Company, A91 Partners, Motilal Alternatives, Avishkar, and multiples. These are funds which are already leveraging the GIFT fund regime to attract global capital into India. And these funds that are being attracted from the GIFT City through these funds are now being channelized into capital deployment across multiple sectors in the country, across the country, including in things like infrastructure, healthcare investments, consumer sectors, supporting both job creation, productivity growth, as well as financial inclusion. The third point I would make, and I guess you would have heard this at the World Bank Group, that in the World Bank Group we have defined private capital mobilization, job creation as one of our biggest agendas. If you see over the next 10 to 15 years, we see that in developing countries there will be a job deficit, or there will be 1.2 billion people that will be coming into the workforce in developing countries. And as a business, as a usual approach, we'll only be able to create 400 million jobs for them. So seeing this large amount of human capital that's going to come into developing countries over the next decade, we, the World Bank Group, have defined helping to create more and better jobs for the people in these countries as our single biggest agenda. And the way we support this is basically to focus on 3 areas. The first is to help to build foundational infrastructure, which helps to create or foster private sector enterprises, infrastructure in the space of energy, transportation services, also digital infrastructure, and human capital infrastructure, education institutions, healthcare services. So that's number 1. The second area of our work, which also resonated as I was listening to the presentation on the gift city with Mr. Sanjay, is around regulations, because we could see that the power of the work that we can, as World Bank Group, especially led by our colleagues at the World Bank, John and his team, we can do with the governments to open regulations, not only in the financial sector, as was mentioned in the presentation, but also in other sectors to help to attract private capital. And number 3 area is to really scale up private capital, mobilize private capital at much larger scales than before. Because 90% of the jobs are created in the private sector, so that would be one way for us to continue to focus on job creation. And although we are looking at, our year-end just happened at the 30th of June, just a month or so back. And this year we've been able to help to mobilize private capital, although our numbers are still being finalized, but in excess of close to $100 billion. Just in India, John, Junaid and I, we led a new country partnership strategy that was jointly developed by the Government of India and the World Bank Group, that was approved by our board and launched earlier this year in January. And under that, we have very strong ambitions for private capital mobilization in India. We want to reach up to $20 billion of private capital mobilization in India by 2030. This is pretty substantial for us in the World Bank Group, and that would continue to place India at the forefront of private capital mobilization for the bank group globally. And as we do that, our requirement, our need, and our leveraging of the gift city infrastructure will only continue to increase. So we have been a beneficiary of the gift city infrastructure in the recent past through several transactions, and we hope that, we look forward to working with you to innovate, to help to create more regulatory reforms, to innovate and to bring in new innovative financial structures through the gift city to help to create more impact, not only through in Gujarat, but leveraging the gateway of gift city to support development projects all through India. There were a couple of points that was also mentioned in the meetings that I had this week in Japan and last week while I was in Korea.
You will have to hurry a bit, Sarvesh. There are lots of people over here who are waiting to talk to. Yeah? Okay.
Thank you. I just say
No, he's doing that, but he's also giving you so I think he's also giving you a bit of a bhashan. So I was just telling him to actually cut out the bhashan and just do the reactions. Yeah.
No, I think there's some areas that you mentioned about where we can support or where we can leverage more. So definitely, I think one area where the financial investors have talked about where we need to do a lot more in India is in the space of securitizations. So I think the point that Mr. Sanjay mentioned, we would be very keen to see how we can play an innovative role there. The other point that was also mentioned that John already touched upon that is the sustainable infrastructure development, where jointly between the World Bank Group, the World Bank Media and us, we together can help to play a role in supporting both through knowledge agenda but also through long-term financing the infrastructure development as you support the gift city broader infrastructure. With that, let me get back to you. Thank you so much.
Thank you, Sarvesh. The most important are yes. Yeah. So which is why you can talk so long. Okay.